Greetings. My name is Michael Miller, and this is a Michael Miller trademark broadcast out to you because you're watching. Thank you and welcome. It's meant for Michael Miller Pilates licensed affiliates, the Cornu Core, my patrons Clayton, Ruby, Stephanie, and Jonathan, and anyone interested in surviving and thriving as a Pilates instructor. It's Friday. It's been an interesting week. To me, highlighted by getting to watch live Regan Zubak, I think is how you say her last name now, but Regan of Village Pilates did the full reformer, so go watch that. Village Pilates Studio. They're in the Chicago area. And while I'm saying, number one, I have another recommendation on go watch something. So just Google YouTube, because you want to see a YouTube video. Gail Eisen, which is one of the authors of this book, right? And Pilates. So it's you're Googling YouTube Gail Eisen Pilates. And you'll get a link to the interview of this author about the writing of this book. Co-author. As soon as I got done watching that video a few times, I wanted another video by the other author. You know, wouldn't we all? So I highly recommend that, so that you can put shading on the context that I present things in. Okay? And so number two is, where are you on the spectrum? One of the ways I apply context to trying to explain the MMP, POV, the Michael Miller Pilates point of view. Michael Miller Pilates is just a point of view of Pilates. To put some perspective to that point of view, because of the point of view it holds, so there's obvious bias in this, but looking at Pilates as a spectrum between it having no essence and it having essence. So the spectrum is about essence, and does Pilates have any of its own? And just looking at whatever you see that's being expressed as Pilates, don't we all look for essence? On that spectrum, all right, so on that spectrum of having no essence at all versus having essence, that point of view of yes, Pilates has an essence can divide or split off into that is knowable versus that is not knowable, that is unknowable, right? And to the extent that you limit Pilates or an understanding of it to the people that knew Joe and the lineages that they created, and that the authority is only in the association through tradition, word of mouth, whatever I want to say, not everything and not everyone and not all of us, but the characteristics of pointing to anything as though they're unknowable, or they're mystical, or they're magical, or, you know, that there's some secret that only is to be gotten after spending a lot of money and time in the pursuit of whatever that holy grail is presented as being. The characteristics of selling unknowable is cultish, in my opinion. And Richard Green, who wrote a book about power and the characteristics of cult, right? And my point is, yes, okay, part of the Pilates culture will always indulge itself in cultish points of view, or a cult point of view, right? Which has, and the characteristics of cult is that, you know, it's all mysterious and unknowable, and just look up the word and study cases, and maybe I'm using the word wrong. But that it's human nature, because why? Because it's attractive to indulge in that point of view. It's seductive, I think, to just think that this is coming out of those people that knew Joe, that in their best effort to describe it could only have described it better than you could, or understand it better than you can. Which goes back to my number one about reading or watching that interview and letting it sink in that the principles were what they came up with, trying to describe what they could not explain. MMP is an attempt to make an explanation. See? Beyond principles. See, and so what feeds into the cultish nature of Pilates is that it just doesn't really know itself, in my opinion. The origins of it are unknown, or the explanation of it does not come from the creator of it. Is that fair? Unless, of course, you go to Joe's book and take the person, the writer, for their word. Right? There is a way to come to an explanation that goes beyond a fumbling attempt to describe principles of something that they really admitted can't explain or couldn't explain, to which to this day there is no explanation for. And it's attractive and seductive and personal, where who we are is more important than maintaining what it is. As though we're back to the issue spectrum that I'm trying to point out, and the essence versus no essence spectrum. And then, of course, if the less Pilates has an essence of its own, who we are is more important than whatever it is we're maintaining, because we're the ones that are carrying it forward. See, and in looking at archives, meaning, so this book is a book, an archive collection of stuff from somebody's attic, of Joe's pictures, right? Words. There's no video disc in there. My note says, to idolize the past, to place yourself at the center of things, is to miss the message. Or to not acknowledge there's any message at all there. Freeman and Eisen had their attempt at explaining Pilates, and I've made one attempt in terms of publishing something 19 years ago, coming from the point of view that there is an essence to Pilates, and that you can get to that essence right from Joe's book. So on my Facebook feed, I republished something from my blog that shows a pyramid with Joe's picture at each point of the pyramid, and it's Joe's sequence, so the mat work, the mat sequence, and then it's Joe's definition out of his book, and then it's Joe's statement, contrology develops the body uniformly. And in the middle of that pyramid, I think it just says idea, and then the words are uniform eccentric loading flowing through progressive patterns of movement, which is the MMP definition that it makes out of those three things. If I were to republish that again, I might want to put in the middle the word experience or phenomenon, because in past posts or wherever I've talked about the pyramid of fire and the three elements you need for fire: heat, oxygen, and fuel, right? Without any one of those things, you don't get fire. And in Pilates, it's being, thinking, and observing. And without any one of those things, you don't get the experience of complete coordination of being, thinking, and observing. So in MMP, the middle of that pyramid of those three things from Joe is not just the definition of the essence, of what makes it what it is. It misses my point that Pilates is an experience, that the complete coordination of body, mind, and spirit is a state of being in the body in the moment of the doing, and as such is an experience that I feel when I'm in it, and sure seems like others feel it when they're in it. So my title is that the definition that's inside that pyramid I just shared on Facebook from past posts, representing a pyramid of Joe's definition, his promise, and the sequence. I call it his promise because I used to think of contrology develops the body uniformly as a statement about what you get, when really it's a statement about how you get there. It's the means to the execution in the performance of the choreography. And then another social media video clip documenting the history of Pilates. Comes right from the source of, and if you take these principles out into life, you know, they do you well out in life as well. Principles, by definition, just by what principles are reflective of something else. And in MMP, that's the experience. And the experience is defined by Joe. The means to the experience is stated by Joe. And then the choreography that is the method, the conditioning, the training, the preparation for whatever comes up, the MMP point of view goes beyond the common knowledge perspective of principles, and beyond that the unknowable. And there will always be part of the Pilates culture that will find it comfortable coming from that point of view. The purpose of this broadcast is to present you with a point of view that gives you an understanding of what it is, why it is what it is, what you're aiming for as an instructor, and how to hit it. All MMP does, by taking an ideal point of view from Joe's original work, is illuminate the common ground that we all stand on. What I'm so pleased about is that the perspective of Pilates as an ideal, right, takes an identification of something that can be explained, takes what matters to so many out of the hands of so few, arbitrarily portraying it subjectively. Life can't live forever. Read between the lines and see behind the curtain. Add two and two after you've evaluated points of view. Know what you know. Know what you know. And that quote from Max Planck, right, about how something becomes new, it's not in the generation that is, but in the generation that learns it as such. And being in touch with a teacher who's very resonant to my point of view, seeing their enthusiasm for that point of view show up or reflect back to me from one of her students. The end of Camelot. Run, boy, run. To the high ground, see? The high ground is the point of view that gives you Joe to stand on directly and comes with a delicious bonus in an understanding of the biomechanics involved in core new tension. So you recognize that the body does have rotational capacities within it, and it counterbalances those capacities one against the other to distribute load, to move through space. Direct your thinking. Guys,